It's been a hot minute since we last played Cyberpunk 2077. In fact, it was back when it first launched that we completed our playthrough. Well, since then there's been a metric ton of updates, as well as the massive 2.0 update and the Phantom Liberty expansion itself. It's definitely the right time to jump back in and see what's going on with Night City and the new Dogtown area. We've been playing the new expansion along with the 2.0 update changes for a good 20 plus hours now, as we've been getting back into the flow of Cyberpunk 2077's gameplay, experiencing the new mechanics, systems, skills, gear and more that this expansion and update brings, so we're feeling pretty good about sharing our thoughts and impressions on this new expansion content and whether or not it's worth jumping back into Cyberpunk 4. We won't be going over any story spoilers or specifics, so don't worry, you're safe here, and the gameplay we're showing in this video has been provided to us as we can't use our own just yet. It includes various early game missions and gameplay from the new Dogtown area, so apologies for the lack of context editing in this one. We're going to mix together our thoughts on the 2.0 update as well as the Phantom Liberty expansion itself, since we've experienced these new things together at the same time. First up, let's go over the performance and graphics. I personally have a massive gripe against any game that doesn't perform as I would expect, which should either be a solid and reliable 30 or 60 frames per second depending on your console and platform. I played this on PC with my 4080, which is a pretty impressive graphics card with full DLSS and ultra settings. Honestly, I've been extremely surprised and impressed. It's been super smooth and consistent for me, it feels super immersive, and honestly, with the graphical fidelity at ultra settings in this game, it is a sight to behold as you play. From seeing the new Dogtown area in the daytime with all of the details of the buildings and the streets, to its nighttime with various lights and vehicles lighting up different areas of your screen, it's definitely a visually impressive game, even more so than some more recent fully complete games that have come out. That being said, 26 on the channel has also been playing on PC but with a 4060, and did get some performance hiccups and FPS drops. This is a game much like the base version of Cyberpunk 2077, where you will need to tweak your settings to your particular system and graphics card's power and performance. But seeing the game at its higher end with my 4080 was a very impressive sight in my opinion, and a very smooth one. An important thing to know is that we have not experienced a single crash, there's been no game-breaking bugs or visual problems, which was a super pleasant surprise. However, we did still encounter some things, such as the number of people in the street dynamically changing in front of you, which does take you out of that immersive state. And I did have a couple instances of NPCs standing or floating several feet above the ground, but these were pretty far and few between to be fair. Overall, when it comes to the performance and the graphics, I am highly impressed. This game looks brilliant. And now we should talk a bit about the story and the missions in the expansion, again spoiler free. For things to do in this expansion, there is additional side content in the form of side gigs and activities to do around Dogtown, and some of these are actually pretty good and rewarding, including the dynamic airdrop events that offer a fight as well as good rewards, and even permanent inventory space increases and high quality weapons from these airdrops. They're super fun and always worth doing. And there's various stations to hack around the place to get more relic skill points, which is a new feature added in the expansion. But I do want to expand on our thoughts about the main story missions of this expansion. Some of these missions, in my opinion and from my memory of the base game, have not only been extremely fun, but also perhaps some of the best within the game. From various themed spy missions that have elaborate briefs and executions, to setting up a convoy ambush with customizable defenses and choices of how you want to take on this mission, they were super fun, fleshed out, and varied. These are some missions and storylines that I'm definitely going to remember. However, there is a drawback. It is pretty short if you take out all of the side content. You're probably looking at around 5 to 8 hours of an actual storyline, which of course is greatly expanded on if you do like to explore, do the side gigs and other activities around Dogtown. So it's a really awesome experience, but a short one when it comes to those specific main story missions of the expansion. Also, there is some filler in between the major story beats, such as waiting to be called back or having to complete mandatory side gigs in order to progress, which we weren't super fond of this kind of filler content to artificially increase the length of the campaign. But that being said, the actual campaign itself was very rewarding with fun missions that made you want to continue on and do the next one. The 2.0 update also brought a lot of changes into the base game. So much of what you will actually do in the rest of Night City does have a fresh new spin on it, even though at its core it's the same, just improved. Furthermore, and perhaps our most impressive things so far, is that this expansion has some very impressive branching storylines. Both myself and 2-6 have completed the game and chose different options at various points in the story that led us down completely different paths. From what we can tell, it looks like depending on your choices, you could be doing an hour or so of completely different missions with different outcomes, with one that basically ends the whole game for you, while others will have their own separate outcome completely. So the difference in your choices in this one are absolutely awesome and lend to a lot of replayability or save scumming to get the best outcome. So for the actual main story itself, it's a bit of a short one, but very impressive, and we particularly loved the difference the choices made. Within this expansion, of course, while doing the missions, you will encounter several new characters. Each of them feel very well fleshed out, and they're interesting in their own way. You'll learn more about them and why they behave like they do as you play. It's definitely intriguing to figure them out and make choices based on what you know about them. However, we do worry a bit about their likability. Pretty much every character that's new isn't exactly the most friendly or likable person, and these reasons do become more apparent to you as you play more, which makes you understand them. But compared to the first game where you experience Johnny Silverhands for the first time, it's not quite on that caliber. But now let's talk about the gameplay, because with redesigned skill trees and perks, a completely revamped Cyberware system, the new Relic skill tree, new items, AI improvements, and more, there's a lot to take in. The game as a whole just feels improved, and has a new spin on a lot of things. It definitely feels like a good time to jump back into Cyberpunk, because it's like the whole game has a fresh coat of paint on it. Firstly, the new skill trees do feel improved from what I remember of the base game. There's a good amount of depth and a different way to branch out on your own and define your own personal build. However, they will essentially still lean into the same archetypes of builds, like going melee, mantis blades, wire, sneaking, or guns blazing, so there is build diversity, especially with the depth of your cyberware, but I currently don't feel like you'll be doing anything dramatically different than before, unless you completely max your character out to the new level cap at 60, so you can really dip your toes into several different of the skill branches. And now we need to speak about the Cyberware Changes. There's now a cap that limits you on how much you can have actively equipped at once. This will increase with your level, and there is a specific perk that further increases it. However, this is a dramatic change from the base Cyberpunk 2077, where money basically meant you could get more cyberware and thus more power. Now you're limited and will have to make choices based on what upgrade you want to use next, because each thing has a cost that also changes higher based on its rarity, which basically means you cannot pimp yourself out like you used to be able to. So no more rushing to get all of the legendary cyberware at the start of the game, because you probably just can't wear it all. To touch on the difficulty, it did feel like it was on the easier side of things. I made a full melee mantis blade build, maxing out reflexes and body, so I was a tanky beast in melee combat. But this also meant I destroyed everything pretty quickly and was almost invincible. Of course, you can just increase your game's difficulty for more challenge, but I wasn't max level and I didn't have particularly good or rare cyberware either, so I just felt like I should have had a bit of a harder time still on the setting I was. Now we need to touch on the Relic skill tree. This is a welcome addition with new perks added in, and I particularly enjoyed the increased leap distance for the mantis blades. I really felt a lot more mobile with them. However, it wasn't fully what I expected it to be. You gain relic points from completing the story and also finding terminals to hack around Dogtown. Interestingly though, this is a skill tree where you can basically max the whole thing out. It's not a branching skill tree with choices and options, but instead a few upgrades where ultimately you will get all of them or most of them unlocked. They're nice bonuses with a couple of manual skills, again nice to have but not as fully in-depth as I would hope, and it's kind of like an unlock and forget for the most part. So overall, is Cyberpunk 2077 worth jumping back into for the 2.0 changes or for the expansion itself? I'm going to slap this with a big fat yes. This is perhaps one of the best DLC post-launch packages that we've played, particularly in recent years. With the overhaul of the 2.0 update, a lot of things feel fresh and fun again, even though it's the same game. And the actual Phantom Liberty expansion itself is absolutely fantastic just for the story alone. The area it adds in isn't particularly huge, but there is a lot to do if you plan to do the side content as well. All in all, if you haven't touched Cyberpunk 2077, now is the perfect time. The new expansion will seamlessly be part of the story for you. Meanwhile, if you're a returning player, just doing this new storyline is definitely worth it, and it might just spark you to do a whole new playthrough. This is a game where if I fully had the time, I would completely jump in from the beginning and give the whole game a playthrough again. I absolutely loved playing through the expansion. It was a blast of a time, and everything looked good and felt good to play. But as mentioned, it's not perfect. There are things that I wish were slightly more in depth or expanded on, and I would have loved it if it was a little bit longer. So do you plan to jump in or not? Tell us your thoughts in the comments down below, but that's our rundown. And make sure to check out these 2 videos on the screen now and subscribe, because we're gonna have loads more content coming your way soon that you won't want to miss out on. If Cyberpunk's your thing now, then subscribe to the channel and keep your eyes open in the next weeks. And then tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.